All right. Good evening and welcome to our live stream. I'm your host, Komen SK. When the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed in Kenya, a number of drastic measures were introduced by the government to control the spread of the pandemic. Most of these measures, in one way or another, have affected or have left the vulnerable people in the society in a worse state than on a normal day. And with regards to this, therefore, the government also put in place strategies to cushion them. And tonight we have the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection, Mheshimiwa Simon Chelugui, ambaye pia ni mtoto wa Baringo. Waziri Chelugui is here to help us to get to know and understand the strategies that the government has put in place to help the vulnerable in our society at this difficult time. So, Bwana Waziri, karibu.
Asante, thank you very much, Komen.
Long time. Long time.
Nairobi is good.
Yeah.
We are keeping safe, social distance, sanitizing, and the majority of us, we work 3/4 at home and 1/4 in the office.
Oh, so are you working from home now? Because this is part of work for you.
Yes, we balance. There are cases where we have to, all our meetings now, even cabinet is conducted virtually. So we are all, no meetings are held physically. So other than small consultations that we need to do in the office, majority of our engagements are virtual.
Sawa sawa. Unaweza wasalimia the viewers before we continue.
Thank you, Komen, and good evening, everyone. Good evening, those from Baringo and diaspora, those who are tuning in live and watching. Welcome, and I felt very important when I got this request to be hosted by Komen, an old friend, an upcoming youth with a lot of passion towards technology utility, right from those days of the university. I felt that it will be an opportunity first to support what he does and to take this opportunity also to explain to people from Baringo and the rest of the country what we are doing as a ministry to cushion and minimize the pain of this pandemic. So I welcome you all and look forward to a very engaging interaction during this program. Okay. We welcome all your comments. We have also mobilized all our social assistance officers, children officers, and even coordinator of the county and those dealing with the BWDs. They are all tuned in, and in case of any emerging issue, even things that may not have been sorted, they are tuned in and they should be able to respond by action.
Very well. Naona umejitayarisha sana, uko na jeshi kibao. Anyway, now, Mheshimiwa, when we talk about the vulnerable in the society, what does it really mean? How do we define these people?
What do we mean vulnerable? It means somebody who is exposed. It means somebody who is households who are exposed to risk and uncertainty, leading to possible social and economic deprivation as a result of reduced resilience. A complex and multi-dimensional concept relating to exposure of the people to a shock or a process linked to their ability to manage the assets. So vulnerability means this is somebody who cannot help or support himself. He needs some assistance, he needs somebody to hold their hand. And we have a number in Baringo and in the country. And maybe from the national perspective, we have approximately 833,000 registered older persons or senior citizens who are vulnerable. That is 70 years and above. And the children or orphans and vulnerable children in the country number about 243,000. And then people living with severe disabilities in the country number 47,000. Now, in our home case, that is Baringo, we have 12,222 older persons, senior citizens over 70 years, spread across the 6 sub-counties. and we have 6,324 orphans and vulnerable children. And we have people living with severe disability, over 803. All these numbers, you'll find the leading in the county is Baringo North, with older persons, 3,155, orphans and vulnerable children, 1,130, and 149,000 people living with severe disabilities. They are followed closely by Tiati, and that will be understood because Tiati is a county that is still coming up among the 6 counties of Baringo. And we have older persons numbering 1,075 and 2,000. This as the highest number of orphans and vulnerable children of 2,170. Then there are people living with severe disability of 2,007. They are followed closely by Ravine, and you know Ravine has a higher population. We have 2,384 older persons, 665 orphans and vulnerable children. Actually, Ravine as the second lowest number of vulnerable children, and 96 PWDs totaling 3,145. They are followed closely by Baringo Central with 2,819 vulnerable people, composed of 2,006 older persons, 744 orphans and vulnerable children, and 69 PWDs, which is the lowest in the county. There is the lowest number of people living with severe disabilities in Baringo Central. Then followed closely then by Baringo South. Actually, Baringo South is number 3. They have 2,924. They have 1,737 older persons, 1,053 children, and 134 people living with severe disabilities. And finally, Mogotio has the lowest number of registered vulnerable people, with 1,865 older persons, 562 orphans and vulnerable children, and 118 PWDs. Now, I would hasten to say this is a register of 2017.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is not an updated register.
Very well. And clearly from the numbers that you've just read, they are a bit huge, and we would be concerned about maybe the challenges that these people are going through. You as a government, as a representative of the government, what challenges, from your perspective, what challenges are these people facing, and how are you, what do you have in store for them at this time? Because they are the most affected at this time.
Thank you, Komen. One of the challenges these people are facing, these vulnerable people are facing, like in the rest of the country, are food requirements. They cannot afford they cannot afford to put bread on their table every day. Health-related requirements. You've seen people, they get sick and they are not able to go to hospital, buy medicine, or even get consultant services, diagnostic services to identify their challenges. And the other issue is proper shelter and clothing they don't have, and then regular income. They lack regular income, predictable income, so they are not able to plan and organize their lives.
Yeah. So recently, the government released about 8 billion to support these people. And looking at the numbers in Baringo North, Baringo, is it Baringo Central, and Ravine, in that order, the numbers decrease with that order. But looking at the numbers in Baringo and also the level of severity in Baringo being an arid and a semi-arid area, I can imagine how difficult time is at the moment. I would like to know how much Baringo got. What was the share of Baringo County from that 8.7 billion?
One, there are a number of interventions that government is making to support and push on these vulnerable people from the pain and severity of their disability. Provision of regular and predictable cash transfer stipends to cater for basic needs, and diet diversification. When they get this money, like recently we paid 2 batches of disbursement. Each month we pay every vulnerable person 2,000. So in the last disbursement, each person got 4 months in arrears, which amounts to 8,000. Now this money is enough to provide a balanced diet or diversified diet. They're able to buy meat, they're able to buy flour, they're able to buy cooking for oil. They can also buy medicals and medicine. It also brings joy, happiness. And this is the best form of intervention, because cash transfer for the first time this season, we were able to deliver this money faster and quicker using the bank accounts. From January to April, we were migrating. Since I joined the ministry, we have moved these vulnerable people from manual register to a digital platform, and also connected them with and opened for them a bank accounts. So when the president announced this allocation or disbursement on Thursday, my team, the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, were able to sit overnight and organize and engage. And on Saturday morning, I had a meeting with the 4 banks, KCB, Cooperative Bank, Equity, and Post Bank. And we agreed that since we are facing a pandemic, corona pandemic, there were guidelines which had been issued and given by the Ministry of Health, social distance, sanitization. And given most of these people are older persons, they could be suffering from underlying conditions. And it was therefore important for the banks to also support us as a CSR to minimize the spread of this pandemic. I'm happy to know that these banks were able to follow, to heed our advice. They organized open. You saw in Kabarnet, we saw in Mogotio, the queue from Kabarnet, Kenya Power, all the way to the door or the gate of Kabarnet High School. They had seats, they organized for seats, and there were cases of provision of tents. So in this, we were able to respect the Ministry of Health protocols of social distancing. But at the same time, for the first time, we were able to bring in order and dignity. Before, money used to go through many hands. And you will eventually hear maybe those who are charged with the responsibility even taking part of the money from these beneficiaries. This time, each person got an SMS at 3 o'clock from Safaricom notifying them that you have received 8,000 shillings from government of Kenya. So even when they were going to the bank, they had the message on their phones. This is a practice we want to carry on. They're transparent, efficient, dignified transfer of money. Now so we are also...
You've mentioned about the measures that you've taken to ensure that this money reaches these people. But maybe I can take you back to the figures and maybe the number of people who have benefited from this program of cash transfer by the government. So it was 8.7 billion at the national level going to every county, or rather divided among the 47 counties. How much did the people of, or rather the vulnerable in Baringo receive?
The people from Baringo, I'll break them to 6 sub-counties. In Tiati, we had a total of 3,482 people. And these people received 27,856,000. In Eldama Ravine, we had 3,145 people, and they received 25,160,000. In Mogotio, we had 2,545 people who received 20,360,000. And then in Baringo North, we had 4,434 who received 35,472,000. Baringo South, we had 2,924 people who received 23,392,000. And finally, Baringo Central, we had 2,819 who received 22,552,000. In total, in Baringo, we have registered these 3 categories of beneficiaries: older persons, orphans and vulnerable children, and people living with disability. Total number of these people are 19,349. And the total amount dispersed in this current disbursement ongoing is 154,792,000. This is the total amount of money that we have disbursed, and they are now with those beneficiaries.
Okay, you've broken down the numbers in every sub-county, and I believe what our viewers are asking themselves is maybe how these numbers were arrived at, or maybe how these people were selected to benefit from this program. I believe there was a procedure, yeah.
This program, as I was saying, the interventions were this regular and predictable cash transfer, provision of medical cover. I'm working on an arrangement. Once NHIF is in place, we are sourcing for money because we noted that other than food and other than food and shelter and clothing, the other big challenge is medical. And we think by providing and covering these older persons, we will be able to cushion them properly from any challenge, create proper resilience. So we can also, when they improve their clothing and housing, it improves their confidence and they can live well, integrate well with the society. Now, going back to your question, you asked about how these people were mobilized or identified. One, any Kenyan who is 70 years and above and is not a beneficiary of any other government fund or is a pensioner is qualified for this money. We also look at the poverty level, or rather the ability of the person. There are people who are 70 years and above, but may not really be needy of this money. They are not pensioners. They are not benefiting from any government support, but they don't even need this money. They are well-to-do. Find somebody has a ranch, has cows, has goats, is farming, is doing Bergera farming. He has goats in Parwesa. He has a herd of cattle in Tiati. Is able to take care of himself. Those people do not qualify. Now, orphans and vulnerable children, they are children-led families. Maybe they lost their parents through cattle rustling, or through accidents, or sickness, and they are now unable to meet or to survive as a family. And these children, through the ngao or the chiefs and the leadership of the county or local leadership, they are mapped out and they are identified just the same way we handle many other programs government is supporting, like the bursaries. Then PWDs, again, the identification, they register through the association, but more than that, using our social officers and officers handling PWDs and Ngao, or the local administration, we are able to register. So currently, these are the numbers who are registered in Baringo. This register was lastly done in 2017. We are working with Treasury to support us with additional 9 billion. We have looked at the last year's census. Last year's census indicates that Kenyans above 60 years are 2.9. Kenyans above 70 years are 1.4. In our mapping, we have estimated that out of this 1.4, we are removing approximately 200,000 from this register. People who have means, or they're currently in payroll, they're in our pension register. So we remove them, and we are left with people who are 70 years and possibly would require this support. Then the other thing is, we have also a register of all PWDs through the last year's census. So in total, we have estimated that we will need additional budgetary support of 9.9 billion to be able to cover all Kenyans who are eligible for this program.
So speaking about the numbers, and there was a point that you said the register that you're using is as of 2017. And how often does your ministry update this information? Because I'm sure there would be some complaints that maybe fulani wa fulani hakuwekwa kwa list, yet there have been the community feels that that family or that person is vulnerable. How often do you update the list?
To be honest with you, this program started as a pilot in 2004. And as I told you, we now have it began with 500 families. Today, we have 833,000 older persons or senior citizens, 70 years and above in the program. Missing in the program is approximately 350 who could be in this program. Then we have also 243,000 children who need our government support, but those are the registered. In our projection, the numbers could be in the range of 500. Then we have the PWDs who number 70 from our register, from the census. Because last year, you remember, census were picking information about the person. And in our register, we have 47. So we are yet to build up our register. Now, from 2004 up to date, the register as the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection has been able to disperse 72 billion shillings to older persons and 70 billion to all vulnerable children and 8 billion to BWDs. Now, our system or our register is not dynamic or is continuous. It's not on a continuous basis. It is done based on budget. It's done based on a program or a project that maybe based on the budget allocated in that financial year. The ministry will go out registering members. Now, this time round, we want to map out all Kenyans so that we now overcome the questions and challenges that you are bringing out now, that there are people who are qualified but not listed or not registered. So we want to be fair, we want to be equitable, we want to be just to everybody. Anybody who is 70 and above can be registered tomorrow or immediately qualifies or qualifies for this fund. We should be able to register. We are now in the process. I'm institutionalizing now. I'm going to form a board called Social Assistance Fund. And this fund has already gotten approval. The regulations have been approved in the last cabinet. We are going to, I'm forwarding the same regulations to the Honorable Attorney General for onward transmission to Parliament. Once these regulations are approved in Parliament, I'll be able to establish the board of Social Assistance Fund. Thereafter, we will be able to employ, it will be model like CDF. We'll be able to employ social assistance officers who will be based in every county. And they'll be working together with the Registrar of Persons, Deaths and Births, Registrar of Pensions, the Ngao team, so that anybody who maybe by bad luck dies, we are able to replace, because this money is meant for the living. And we are able to bring on board also anybody who qualifies, like those who get to 70 years on a daily basis, should be in the register and start benefiting the next month.
So now you've spoken about forming a board. Will this board be devolved or it will still be managed at the national level? Because there's when we did the promo yesterday and today, there's a gentleman who is among the persons with disabilities, and he was asking, or rather he was concerned about the way these funds are being managed. Even the register, it is being updated from the national level. So would this fund, or rather this board that you are forming, be devolved, or it will still be hosted at the national level?
Okay, the board will be headquartered in Nairobi. It will be one of the parastatals under my ministry, but they will have offices and offices across the country, all the 47 counties, and their business will be basically social assistance fund. The issues of children, issues of other social issues will be dealt with by the social officers. Right now, the social officers, the children officers are doubling as also social assistance fund team. we will want to now dedicate a special team that will be able to handle these issues, and they are also able and ready to register and deregister members as they exit. You will know there are many children who have been graduated from the streets, taken to children's homes. They have gone to school supported by government. You know, the presidential bursary fund, which my ministry administer. We support children in colleges, street children in schools. And some of them have graduated, and I've seen even bank managers who came from street families. Today, they have exceeded from that bracket. We have old people who have grouped themselves into 10, 20, formed associations, started business. They are doing very well, and they have moved again out of this bracket of protection bracket. We have PWDs who have been aided or supported, and they're given kits, and they have been through affirmative action of government in procurement or any other form of employment. They have been mainstreamed, they have been employed, and they have moved also out of protection bracket.
All right, fair enough. I think that board that you're planning to form, I think it will really address the challenge that we're having at this time, because there was even a case in Kimose the other day. We ran a story about a family, a mother who's raising 4 children. 3 among them have disabilities, and only 1 among the children is being supported by the government. So she's left to struggle with raising the rest of the 3 by herself. And being a single mother, you can imagine the challenge that they are facing. Now, back to the updating of the register. You've said that you would be requesting the Treasury to give you an additional 9 billion. Would it cater for the people who have not been listed, or it is just focusing on the people who have been listed on the program?
Based on our targeting and the census report that we have, we feel, or in our estimation as a ministry, that with the additional 9.9 billion, we can go flat out across the country and recruit anybody eligible under the 3 categories. With the 9.9 and with we have, in addition to the current budget of 29 billion, we will be dispensing approximately 38 billion, which should cover all categories, the 3 categories, 100%. So we are talking of registered and also going flat out to ensure we capture, including the example you have given us, we'll be able to capture, because we are targeting using information collected from various sources, various government documents. We have a Kenya Bureau of Statistics. We have a registrar of people living with disabilities. We have registrar of births and deaths. And then we are also using social officers, health officers, and also our local administration.
Okay, now before we're about to go into half of the time that we have, and we will also need to go into the comments that people are, or rather the questions that people are dropping on the comment section. So before we dive into that, I would encourage our viewers to continue giving their thoughts and maybe asking their questions, and anything that you need clarification to be made by the Cabinet Secretary who is here with us tonight. Keep sending your comments, sending your thoughts, sending your questions. And before we go into the comments and the questions, maybe I would, the Kenya government created a fund to fight this COVID-19. You've said that you're asking, or rather you've requested the Treasury to add you another 9 billion. Funds are being raised. Would this money be also channeled to benefit, or rather to help the vulnerable in the society?
The government of Kenya announced, our president announced as part of the stimulus package to cushion and minimize the pain of this pandemic, a package of 10 billion shillings to be administered by my ministry. This 10 billion shillings has been captured in our second supplementary estimates. We're now in the process of finalizing the expenditure of this money. Our starting point will be the 4 initially locked down counties of Nairobi, Mombasa, Kilifi, and Kwale. And our next one, which was locked down, is the county of Mandera. Beyond that, we have begun with a pilot. We have already identified 108,000 people spread across the 4 counties. About 48,000 in Kwale, 37,000 in Kilifi, 5,000 in Mombasa, about 20,000 in Nairobi. And from this pilot, we will upscale our intervention across the country. So that is one on the vulnerable. So we are giving them a stipend of 1,000 shillings per week. The intention is to reduce pandemonium and social unrest. If we lock down a section of the county, like now, government announced lockdown of Isli and Old Town in Mombasa, we then have to ask ourselves, how will those people survive? They have been depending on small engagements, people moving from Isli to the CBD of Nairobi. Now they are locked down. How will they survive? They need food, they need medical care, and they need other upkeep costs for livelihood. So we have to define a way of supporting them, and this is one. So in total, this budget, that alone will take about 1.3. But these are still under discussion. We have about 5 cabinet committees handling various issues of this pandemic, on fighting this pandemic. There's a security, there are people dealing with post-corona, there's a committee dealing with business and economic recovery. All this where I advise the Minister for Treasury, in charge of Treasury. So all these are meant to find ways of minimizing. And I can tell you, Komen, and the people listening, we have tried our best. Although we are registering now greater numbers, the spike has not been as severe as in other countries who took this issue casually. And the issues and guidelines that have been given by government are very important, because the way this pandemic spreads has been, experts have advised us, they are spread through contact or through maybe contact is one of them. So that's why we are advising people to maintain social distance, or through sputum, people spitting or interacting as one. So this virus moves through human bodies. So when you minimize movement and cessation of, carry out cessation of movement, we actually tend to control the spread. And that's why you see the spread in counties are different. We don't have a case in Baringo up to now. And I want to appeal to the people of Baringo to continue maintaining the following the guidelines issued by government. Masks must be worn. We must maintain highest level of hygiene, maintain social distance. We don't know who is infected. You don't know who engaged with who. So that is one way of handling the 10 billion. But however, I've seen a question even from Daisy Rotino on the measures the ministry is doing to cushion those who lost their jobs. Out of this 10 billion shillings, we are also thinking of targeting small and micro businesses. You can never, there's a very thin line between employee and an employer in a small and micro. We have people who are doing shoe shining, roasting maize, small fellows, they are hawking in town. Now they are challenged by lockdown. There are no people in town to hawk or to sell their wares. And so they are registering no sale or very low sales. And that fellow is now out of job. There are people who commute from Naivasha to Nairobi. There are people who commute from Marakwet to Kabarnet. There are people who commute from Kabarnet to Eldoret. Now, with this curfew and close lockdown curfew that starts at 7, it means people are not able to really do enough sales to sustain their livelihoods. We have matatus going to Eldoret. These matatus have to be back to Kabarnet by 4 or by 5 because of lockdown or curfew. So it means then the frequencies they could carry on in a day are now reduced. They are not able to manage, they are not able to make enough sales to sustain their lives and maybe pay for this vehicle. Now we have reduced that to now groupings. So we have people in aviation, we have people in horticulture, we have people in transport, the border guys, and those who are doing matatu and all forms of transport, manufacturing. And we found that we may have to support approximately 338,000 people. Now, details of mapping and drilling down to the individual are ongoing. So we will be able to make an announcement soon. We have also engaged with the social partners. I chaired a meeting where we signed an agreement on Thursday between myself, COTU Secretary Atwoli, and FKE CEO Jacqueline Mugo. And we have agreed that because of this pandemic, which is not caused by employee or employer, we suspend all the CBS, either ongoing or agreed. We also agreed that we allow workers to go on leave, a normal leave for 30 days. And if this situation is not, if the situation doesn't change, I extend it by another 15 days. If again the situation doesn't change, allow, maybe engage with the employee and maybe agree on half pay. And finally, if this doesn't work out again, we then allow workers to go on unpaid leave. Employers have come back and said, you cannot just have a worker on unpaid leave forever. There must be limits. But you know, we are hopeful, we are optimistic that some solution will be found. So we don't want.
You've gone into explaining how you're also planning to cushion the workers, and you've given an elaborate plan. You've said for SMEs, there's a very thin line separating the employer and the employee. I've heard of what you've outlined measures like urging the employer not to fire immediately and maybe allow the workers to go on a leave. If the situation gets worse, maybe take a salary cut or maybe extend the leave and such like things. Do you think those regulations or those measures that you've put across are being followed by employers at the moment?
Come again, please. I think I was reading a comment from some Janet Kiriswa.
No problem. I was saying you've given measures or other directives that or recommendations that you gave to the employers regarding the welfare of employees at this difficult time. Most companies are closing down, some are scaling down, and some are even being forced to scale, to reduce the workers by firing some of them, forcing or rather telling some to take some unpaid leave or a salary cut. Do you think those measures that you're giving as a ministry are being followed by the employers?
Currently, you know, we are in a very unprecedented moments in our country. This pandemic has never hit us we have never been hit by a pandemic like this. I'm told the last one was a Spanish flu,
which 1918.
1918, approximately 200 years from now. So majority of the fellows around were not there. Although I've seen some kind of actions they took that time, which are similar: curfew, cessation of movements, all these issues that were used to address the spread of corona. Now, the measures that we have announced as a ministry are guidelines. They are not prescriptive. These are guidelines held at the national level. We expect individual employee and employer to engage at the shop level, to engage at the organization level. So whatever we have agreed and signed with the Atwoli and the employers led by Jacqueline Mugo will then translate to the individual employee and employer will pick from those guidelines and now internalize or domesticate in their own style. Now, enforcement at the moment, in normal days or normal times, the Ministry of Labor is a custodian of all agreements, and they are expected to insist on compliance. Then they enforce these agreements, and at worst case, or they also take employers to court. We are also able to arbitrate cases when they arise, disputes where employee is not productive, employers complaining. These issues come all the way to the Ministry of Labor. And at that time, they're supposed to arbitrate. In the current circumstance, we cannot enforce any agreement because of the circumstance. What we do is we engage on social dialogue, engaging the parties.
So I think we've really taken a lot of time diving into the questions that we had for the CS, and I think it will only be fair to read out the comments and some of the questions that people have on the comment section. And Daniel Kemboy is saying that from analysis or true numbers, Baringo County remains the least employed county in the nation at the national level. Since you are one of our own, how are you doing to measure, or rather to ensure that Baringo County employees as many youths as possible in the Republic of Kenya in the remaining 2 years? I think he's asking about how do you ensure that you increase the number of employees in Baringo now that Baringo is one of the least employed county in Kenya. That is Daniel Kemboy. Edmond Ndombi, what role did the social development officers and children officers play in the new dispensation of social assistance fund after the formation of the board? I think he's looking into the future. What role will those officers who are working with the ministry at the moment, what role will they play now that a board is being formed to undertake the role of vetting and even getting those numbers, the people and the number of people per area who should be benefiting from the social protection fund? Ibra Airmax is asking, some employers have given notice of not going to submit NSSF contributions, and at the end of this month, or rather at the end of this month, what is your take on this? Some employers have given a notice of not submitting NSSF money or other contributions by the employer, and he's asking what's your take on that. We'll pick another two, then we will proceed. We'll give you a chance to respond to them, then we will continue. Roji Kirui, how can you help us to get tax exemptions? Because it takes long to get a tax exemption certificate. That is Roji Kemboy. He has another question. Assistive devices, we are not getting from Ravine sub-county. I think this could be someone who's speaking on behalf of the people with living with disabilities. He's asking about the tax exemption for the people living with disabilities, and also the ease of acquiring or obtaining assistive devices. Then finally, Janet Kiriswa, she's asking, just lost her question, just a moment. How do you identify Kenyans from private sector who have been laid down? That is Janet Kiriswa, who's watching from Ravine. Should there be another one? Maybe I'll read out once you handle the 3 or the 4 questions that I've asked. Sorry, before I close, Manyarki Godwin Kibet, he works with a pension firm. He's asking, or rather he's saying that that's very commendable, and on the initiatives taken on the cash transfers. I think his is a comment, really. I thought it was a question, and him working with a pension firm, I thought it would be an interesting question to handle. Okay, you can respond to the few that we've read out.
Thank you very much. I'll start with, let me start from bottom up. Janet Kiriswa. One is finding out how we identify private workers laid laid down or who are being laid off by private sector. Now, in our own ILO has given some guidelines. ILO is International Labour Organization, which my ministry relates a lot every year. And every year we go to Switzerland to attend their annual meetings, which is a meeting of all labor ministers and unions. And they have given us a certain number that is being used worldwide. And that number is 6.8% of all workers in the categorized sectors of transport, wholesale and retail, in the sector of agriculture. So approximately 6.8%. Now, we also have our own Kenya National Bureau of Statistics who carry out household survey across the country, and they are able to give us the numbers. Now, based on that, we took a percentage of all the numbers that we had through our Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and the formula given by ILO. And when we reduced it, it came to about 338,000 people who have lost jobs. Now, Komen, I also want to inform Janet that from our mapping, there are 2.9 million Kenyans in formal employment, both public and private. And there are approximately 15.05 million Kenyans in informal sector. So those in informal sector, the only way to identify them is either through registration certificates of counties and ministries or counties and registrar of persons. They have been paying NSSF or they are not paying NSSF, but they are registered businesses. And these businesses are led by owners. So occasionally it becomes, as I told you, there's a thin line between owners and employees. So this 338, a team is working on reducing that targeting to individuals. And we are looking at a way of going further and getting their mobile numbers and using those numbers to intervene as the way we have done for people, these 4 categories of vulnerable people. This formula has been used in Germany. America have also used it, but we all know our national capacity to support everybody. As this pandemic continues, the number of vulnerable people will keep increasing. Those in need of social protection will increase. There are the 3 categories who have been mapped out through the social protection are going to increase because they are emerging new vulnerable group. People who are working and earning are not longer earning, and therefore now join the bracket of vulnerable group. So this mapping is ongoing, and we have agreed today. I received letters from World Bank, DFID, UNICEF, who want to assist us with expert knowledge in drilling down and ways of reaching to those people without duplication and overlapping our interventions. So I'll tell Janet, the question she has asked is a very serious and it's a serious question that we are still cracking on how. And we still welcome suggestions, but we are working on how to deal with this issue so that we minimize the pain of the pandemic. Now, Kirui from Ravine has asked about tax exemption and assisting devices. Now, tax exemption is now enhanced through filing of these reports through our officers in the county, the officers handling PWDs. We are now activating them, and we are working very well with Treasury. I've already opened a line with the Ministry of Finance so that any case that comes from people living with disability is given the highest consideration. We are working on opening a desk with Treasury so that all our matters are forwarded and handled from a desk in Treasury, so that delays in tax exemption and the assisting devices which are supported through National Population for Person NPWD, parastatal in Westlands, who have been supporting these people, can have an express assistance from Treasury, so that what we say as through our affirmative actions actually are seen to be working by our people living with disability. Ibra has asked for my view on employers who have given notice to NSSF, NHIF that they will not be paying. I want to say, if you deduct NHIF, NSSF from employee payroll, you must pay. It is an illegality to deduct and deny. But there are also employers who are not paying salaries. So if you don't earn, then employers are also not duty bound to pay NSSF. So it can never be two ways. You cannot deduct and hold. You can only deduct and remit. But if you are not paying and you are not earning, then again, employer is exempt from this payment because it can only be paid from deductions on employee salary. Edmond has asked me about the role of SDOs vis-a-vis SAF. Now, we have very many parastatals in this country handling specific assignments, but the civil servants still play their role. The validation of these categories or vulnerable groups will still require the support of the social officer in the sub-county, in the social office, the SDO, the people, the officer handling PWDs at the sub-county all the way to the county level and moving now to Nairobi. What we are building is a desk. So all this information will be consolidated and handled, and most of the information are almost finalized at the sub-county, so that we minimize the national look of things to a county level, which is almost like we are devolving administration, we are devolving responsibility and decision-making. So the fellows in the county, the officer dealing with BWDs, the officer dealing with all the persons or social officers will be able to sit and feed the social assistance fund officers. Then lastly, Daniel Kimboy has asked about the level of employment in our county, Baringo. The Ministry of Labor and Social Protection is actually not an employment ministry. What it does is it regulates, it oversights relationship between employer and employee. However, we champion job creations through various policies that government does, so that we are able to absorb many people in employment brackets, so that every year we generate as a country over 1.2 million people from colleges, TVETs, polytechnics, universities who graduate. Our economy is able to absorb 883,000 people per year. Therefore, we are left with approximately 400,000 people without jobs every year. Now, as a government, we are looking at inside and outside, expanding opportunities in the country, ensuring that we facilitate business, because labor is a factor of production. There has to be some form of production, and labor is one of the factors. So if we are able to expand and facilitate the businesses locally, then our employment level will go up. Other than internally, the Ministry of Labor is also looking at diaspora job opportunities. I've had already in the last 3 months engaged 5 ambassadors from the Gulf nations, ambassador of Canada, Australia, and European Union. I realized when I was in the Ministry of Water that one of the evenings I had a meeting in Sweden in our ambassador's residence. And I had Kenyans visiting to have to engage, or to rather to share the meal. And I realized 90% of those fellows in Europe are nurses, people offering medical services, Kenyans, people from Baringo, people from other counties. I found about 10 people of Baringo in Sweden, in various hospitals. So I have a real, as a Minister for Labor, I want to upscale the relationship once this pandemic is over, to engage with the European Union and open opportunities for our people to get attached, or to get opportunities in those European countries, either medical. I've also seen in Poland so much is happening in terms of value additions in food production. In Canada, I've seen opportunities in value addition in farms, and in Gulf states, we have a lot of opportunity in hospitality and medical. I met the ambassador of Qatar the other day, and he told me they have about 30,000 Kenyans in Qatar. And from their observation, they are now convinced Kenyans can work. And they are opening 5 referral hospitals. They want to now make Qatar, other than being aviation hub, to be also a medical hub. They are just like India, Thailand. And these hospitals would require about 1,000 medical officers, from pharmacy, from medical officers, and these are opportunities. So in answering Daniel, I will just appeal. I know a number of us sometimes have issues with the foreign jobs, but I want to tell you these jobs are equally very rewarding. As long as you are disciplined, don't expose yourself to international challenges, and you could be exposed to fast life in those countries. But as people from Baringo and the Kenyans, I would urge them to be disciplined, and they will be able to succeed. I've seen in Dubai over 500,000 Kenyans in hotel industry. Either they're in housekeeping, they're in front office, and they are working and doing a lot of work. And therefore, we can succeed equally locally and abroad.
So our time has really gone, Waziri, and I think your last point has really given, I believe it has given a lot of hope to the youth in Baringo who are looking for jobs. And I believe they have marked your words, and they'll be pursuing you for those opportunities when the COVID-19 will have gone down. Now, to the retired people, there are quite a number of people who are retiring right now. Some retired recently, some are about to retire. And right now, moving to Nairobi to follow up on retirement benefits. I believe it is a tall order right now. What measures have you taken as a ministry to ensure that those who have retired do not turn from a working person transiting now to a vulnerable person for failing to access their retirement benefits?
Since I joined the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, the payments, the turnaround on compensation or payment of their NSSF benefits was about 3 months. We have reduced this to 3 weeks. I would like to hear from anybody who has come to NSSF and taken months or weeks looking for these retirement benefits to contact me personally if there are those challenges. I have NSSF commitment from the Chair, General Karangi, and the CEO to expedite any claims from any retirees and sort it out or settle it out in a bracket of 3 weeks. So if there are any challenge through this forum, I want to give a commitment that this should not be the case.
Yeah, so you've heard about the commitment from the CS himself that should you have your retirement benefits delayed, he's making a personal commitment to ensure that you get your benefits as soon as possible. during this time. And I believe also it will go beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as we conclude, floods, rains, people are being affected by flooding in Baringo. And I believe now from the definition of one being vulnerable, I think floods have put people on a more vulnerable state than they were before. I don't know what you can say about that.
Okay, there are multi-agency team dealing with these disasters that we are facing as a country. Yeah. We have the floods. Recently, we were visited by locusts.
Yeah.
And they kept moving from swamp, from turning yellow to green and all this. And now the challenge that we have facing are floods, which are affected by which have...
I see you're really working from home, which is understandable. Yeah.
So when the challenge that we are facing of floods, particularly in Baringo South and parts of Mogotio, and I think the Kericho Valley have also experienced the extreme. I saw the other day we lost lives in Ravine. These challenges are have actually caused destitution among displacing families. People, houses have been destroyed, household and properties have been washed away. But the way we have approached this issue is through multi-agency team. We have the Ministry of Devolution and ASAL, who are trying to support through an emergency. The government has actually directed its energy through the Ministry of Devolution and ASAL. Then we also have the Ministry of Interior, who are trying to minimize the damage caused through various support. You saw in West Pokot, we saw in Elgeyo Marakwet, the intervention through multi-agency team. We had the military, we had the Ngao, and we also had Ministry of Devolution and ASAL. So in total, my ministry is not involved in terms of responding or supporting people who have been displaced through water, floods, and the rest, and the other disasters like locust. When I was in Ministry of Water, what we had budgeted for was an allocation of 400 million. Although it was small, we were able to spread it, and I remember we were able to intervene in places like Nakuru in Elgeyo's area. And this year and last year, we were able to see students in those schools sitting for their exam, which in normal circumstances or during such times, students will be, the school will be submerged. But through the dikes that we built through National Water Corporation, we were able to save, and the students were able to sit for their exam.
Yeah, I think it was only fair to put that question across because it's an issue that is trendy and people are spending outside their homes at the moment due to floods. And of course, not forgetting about the issue of insecurity, which has put so many families in a very vulnerable and dire state. Now, Waziri, there's a rumor going around as we finish that there would be a reshuffle and maybe a few government cabinet ministers would be affected. Are you, in a way, threatened?
I serve my the prerogative of the president to appoint and reassign ministers and all officers or government officers in their duties. And therefore, for me, I serve every day until the day the president feels that my services are needed elsewhere. So for me, I'm not threatened. It is an honor. It is a privilege, and serving is a calling. So I would continue discharging my responsibility. When I was in water, I did what I did, And when I'm now in labor, I need to do the best of it, make the best use of the opportunity or the honor that is bestowed upon me by the president.
Fair enough. That was well tackled. Anyway, finally now, we are in a situation whereby the government is urging us to stay at home as much as we can, wash our hands, and avoid unnecessary travels, and any other strategies that the government is giving to avoid the spread of this COVID-19. What are your final words to the people of Baringo at this time as a Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection?
I want to continue underlying what government has. What government is one, and under the leadership of His Excellency the President, he has addressed the country about 6 times on guidelines and cautions and steam and packages that government is employing to fight this pandemic. We all appreciate that this pandemic is not Kenyan. It's not a Kenyan case. It came from outside our country, and therefore there are proven strategies that have been employed, like China employed a number of strategies, and we have already engaged through our Ministry of ICT a connection between our doctors and Wuhan doctors, and we're able to, on case by case, handle some lab results, and we're able to prescribe treatment for these victims. So I want to underline what the President has said and the Ministry of Health. Social distance, very important. Let us not interact. Let us not take this thing to be, let's not operate normally. We should know that this disease has a gestation period of 14 days. So before you know, a fellow can be infected today in Kabarnet, moves all the way 14 days, someone can go to 9, he can actually visit almost 9 or more countries in those 14 days, or even more. He can move all the way to America, to China, to Europe. So one person can really infect. You've seen the imam in Isli who went praying knocking doors and offering prayers, eventually died, but is now said to be responsible for the high infections in Isli. So if we stayed at home, we will reduce the spread of this disease. We are lucky as a county, but we are not out of the woods, that there are no cases reported by now. We should continue maintaining the advice and the guidelines of the Ministry of Health and all the government advisories. We should not take government negatively. We should not blame government when they become a bit strict, because the intention of all this strictness is to protect Kenyans, to protect people from this infection. And there are no cure. We are yet to find a vaccine for this disease. So since there are no cure, the only way out is to avoid. We rather, even exams, I don't remember in my life a day when we closed schools, days when we stopped vehicles moving from Nakuru to Nairobi, or Eldoret to Nairobi, or Mombasa. I don't remember in my life when we stopped and suspended all flights and parked all our planes in the airport. So this issue is serious. This problem, this pandemic is serious. Lives have been lost. We've seen people in Salvador being thrown out. We've seen people die in streets, people throwing money in Italy. Money is no longer, has no meaning. They need health. They need a life. Money is no longer making any sense. And people took all the money and threw them in the streets. So we saw people die in big economies like China, closing down a whole province. So the seriousness of this disease is big, And we are praying that it doesn't get to the levels we saw in Italy, Germany, America, and China, because we are still a young economy. We don't have capacity. We don't have isolation centers. We don't have referral hospitals. We don't have even our frontline officers. We are yet to kit them properly to fight and defend. This is a war that you cannot see the guns, the bombs, the landmines. You don't see the enemy. You only hear so and so has been hit, so and so has been hit. Our frontline officers, the medical officers, are our best soldiers now. These are the patriotic Kenyans, which the Ministry of Labor is even coming up with a package to motivate them, to inspire them. And we are working on a package. The president has already directed the Ministry of Public Service and Ministry of Health to come up with a package, and the Ministry of Labor will moderate and harmonize together with other public servants.
Yeah. All right. We've given you enough time, or rather some good time, to appeal to the people to follow what the government is saying. And clearly, you just underlined that it is a dangerous disease. And Evans Chebor, who is in the US, is saying that we really need to take precaution because these are deadly disease. So these are people who are in the US, which is at the moment highly hit by the COVID-19. So it was prudent for you, Waziri, to take your time and appeal to the people to follow the regulations that the government through the Ministry of Health is giving. So from us as Baringo News, as we continue to ensure that we put the word out there, and part of this part of what we are doing right now is a sensitization program to ensure that the word is out there and to make people understand that this thing is real, and that if we don't take the precaution that is given, it might really affect us. So let's stay home as much as we can. Protect our loved ones by not making unnecessary movements. Let's continue maintaining our hygiene, wash our hands for at least 20 seconds, and keep abreast to what the government is advising us to do every day. From us as Baringo News, this is Baringo. Thank you. Waziri, asante for making time to be with us tonight.
Thank you.
To our viewers, thank you for taking time to watch. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.